And then you have these TERFs who all the while have been talking about trans people trying to flash them. And here they are. Here they are. The lady doth protest too much. It kind of seems like you are interested in flashing people in public. This poor woman, this poor lady right here, she was standing right there trying to get this woman to calm the down, and she's at ground zero of this explosion. Poor lady. There was a bit of a kerfuffle at Scottish Parliament a couple of weeks ago. At this point, I'm streaming, coming to it a little bit late because the holiday season has been weird for everybody. December's a weird month. All right, we're moving forward through it. So the Scottish Parliament were looking at a reform to their current system of approving gender recognition certificates. Like when somebody wants to change their legal sex, like for the purposes of getting married and stuff like that. Like we're not talking about I'm going to change my legal sex so that I don't have to tell the doctor what my legal sex is or what. Like that's not what this is. We're talking about wedding certificates, birth certificates, and death certificates. Like if someone doesn't have this documentation done, then they will be buried as the sex that they were assigned at birth. Like it will not be accurately reflected that this was a trans person who died. And the same thing with getting married. You know, when you get married, you probably want to get married as your actual, like you don't want to have to write down bride if you're actually like the trans man with a beard in your dynamic, right? If you're getting married to a woman, you don't want to both be brides because that's not what you're doing. You're like, I'm a man and this is my bride. I'm a groom, right? This is the kind of like standard that you want to be able to proceed through. So that's all. That's all the GRC is. It's a gender recognition certificate. In the UK, this is the way that you change the information on your passport and everything. Yeah, you cannot be called husband in the ceremony if you're assigned female but don't have a GRC. Really, is that the legal standard? It's not just on the marriage certificate, but actually the officiant when they're conducting the ceremony. That's, I didn't know about that particular requirement, Chaotic Jamie. Thank you for adding that info, because that makes it even worse that you like have all these barriers in place to keep you from changing it. The way that this worked before was that you would need to get the diagnosis of gender dysphoria through the gender identity clinics. And if you've been following my channel recently, we've talked about this. And we've also, there's also been other channels like Philosophy Tube has been talking about the extreme bureaucratic gridlock, basically, that is happening within the NHS. Like, you know, I think Wales doesn't have this quite as much. Like the bureaucratic difficulties are not quite as remarkable, but in England and Scotland especially, it's been really difficult to get to a gender identity clinic in the first place. The wait lists are like 5 years long. They're seemingly only processing like 50 new appointments each month, right? Like it's really, really quite difficult to get the medical recognition, the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, to not only get your medicine in the first place, like 5 years for a first appointment, which they will not give you your medicine at, but then additionally, needing that gender dysphoria diagnosis in order to change your legal documentation. It's quite stringent. There were quotes from an FOI request. Please clarify whether or not the words husband and wife are legally required to correspond with the gender on a person's birth certificate when said during a civil marriage or civil partnership ceremony in England and Wales. Finally, to answer your question on the use of the words husband and wife, I can confirm that is a legal requirement. So it's a legal requirement in the ceremony itself. Like you cannot get married with dignity as a trans person without the medical sign off of a doctor, right? So there was a change in Scotland just recently. So we're going to, this is great news. Like I don't want to temper this in any way. There is going to be a more amusing addition to this, but I do want to at least start off and recognize that the main thing that we're acknowledging here in the Scottish Parliament is that they have made it much easier to have this gender recognition conducted, okay? We have this info from the Gender Recognition Reform Bill being passed on the Scottish Government website, improving the legal recognition system for trans people. The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill has been supported by the Scottish Parliament. The legislation improves the system by which transgender people can apply for legal recognition through a gender recognition certificate, or GRC. Trans people aged 16 and older applying for a GRC will be required to make a legally binding declaration that they are already living in the required gender and intend to do so permanently. The bill includes safeguards against misuse of the system. It will be a criminal offence for applicants to make a false application. A new statutory aggravator and risk-based approach in relation to sex offences strengthen those protections. Social Justice Secretary Shona Robison said, "This is an historic day for equality in Scotland, with the Gender Recognition Reform Bill being approved by Parliament and by members of all parties. It simplifies and improves the process for a trans person to obtain a gender recognition certificate, which many currently find intrusive, medicalised and bureaucratic." The legislation makes no change to the Reserved Equality Act 2010, and that principle is enshrined in the bill. As I have made clear, the Scottish Government continues to support the provision of single-sex services and the rights of women. So to be clear, before we continue on with this, as much fun as that was to just kind of do, the Scottish Government continues to support the provision of single-sex services and the rights of women means that they support the rights of women to not have trans women in their bathrooms with them. So the Scottish Government is not like fully caught up on it. The passing of this bill is a significant step forward in creating a more equal Scotland where trans people feel valued, included, and empowered. So, and then this goes on to explain the background. So trans people have been able to apply for legal gender recognition through a gender recognition certificate since 2004. Not all trans people have a GRC, and no one is required to have one. Removing the current requirement, oh, that's a hard word to say. Removing the current requirement under the Gender Recognition Act 2004 for applications to have evidence of a diagnosis of gender dysphoria aligns with international best practice and the consensus view of United Nations human rights bodies. Applicants must make a statutory declaration that they have lived in the acquired gender for at least 3 months before applying, or 6 months for 16 and 17-year-olds. Making a false application will carry a maximum penalty of imprisonment for up to 2 years or an unlimited fine, or both. There is also provision in the bill for a person with interest, such as the Registrar General, to make an application to the sheriff on the grounds an application was fraudulent. So this is to say, the whole point of the thing, here is saying that you can't perjure yourself. I don't know if they call this that in the UK, but it is a perjury if you lie on the form and say, "Oh, I'm changing my gender," but you don't actually believe it. That's perjury. In the United States, that's what we would call perjury. People are already talking about I'm going to go ahead and say that I am a man so that I can enter these spaces even though I'm not. They're like, how can we take advantage of this? Yeah, if you die, shut up. So yeah, the clarifying also that they said 16 and 17, that's because it's just saying starting from the age of 16, you can change this info. If you make a declaration, an official declaration that you've been living as your acquired gender for at least a certain amount of time, that's the only requirement that there really is that you confirm legally that you want to transition your gender legally, and you confirm that you've been living in that whatever for a few years. So if you're over the age of 18, it's 1 year that you've been living in the acquired gender, as they call it. Or if you're under the age of 18, so 16 or 17, the only 2 ages under 18 that you're allowed to do this, they only require you to have changed for 6 months. Thank you for the compliments on the accent. I enjoy dicking around. I enjoy having fun dicking around. Yeah, so they're basically saying, Dark Canuck in the YouTube chat, that they allow teenagers to make the official legal sex change so long as they've been legally able to make that declaration and lived in their target gender for up to 6 months, or at least 6 months. Gender acquisition, true, gender acquired. I love the different ways that you can say this. You can say target gender, acquired gender, chosen gender. I don't know. It's hard to. Wouldn't it make sense for that to include even younger people as well? We could potentially benefit from having the ability to change these documents at a lower age, I suppose. But at the present, I think that that's a relatively good metric, like a relatively good metric, is like you can legally change your sex at age 16. I think that's a reasonable age to legally change your name, like right around 16, because you are relatively sure to be committed to that choice for the future, right? The current GRC requires lots of proof, such as letters showing a new name and titled. Yeah, so the new GRC, the previous GRC requirements were just quite stringent. They required a lot of documentation, permission from a doctor, all kinds of silly shit like that, which we don't really like. We don't like the additional steps and things that get in the way. But the good news is that it passed, so that it's much, much, much easier now as a person in Scotland to update your identity documentation, so that when you go to apply for a job or you apply for an apartment, it's not going to be immediately obvious when they look at your ID that you aren't like the thing that they think you are when they look at you. Like if you're a trans woman who passes really well, they'll look at you and think, oh, that's a woman. And then they see your passport and see that it says M, and they immediately know that you're a trans woman. And then the discrimination that they're not supposed to do ends up happening anyway. So you may be surprised to know that there were some trans exclusionary radical feminists who took issue with this bill passing in the Scottish Parliament. It may surprise you to know that there is a virulent anti-trans presence in the UK of frankly, a lot of women who are saying like, oh, we don't like trans women. We don't want them in our bathrooms. So even though the GRC is not required for entrance into a bathroom, nobody is checking your ID when you get into the bathroom. GRCs have nothing to do with whether you're being housed in a male or female prison, I don't think. I don't think that you need to have a GRC changed in order to... Like, if you have had bottom surgery, I don't think they make you be housed with the original... I don't know. I don't know how it works exactly. I don't want to get into it. But they were very upset initially, and I want to show you an example of how upset they were. This woman got very upset during this.
And if you will not be decent towards women who are being right now in jails that you're in charge of, if you will not be decent, then I will be indecent. Get it right up, you terrible, terrible people. You're...
So someone is screaming at her to sit the whole time, I think. But she said, if you will not be decent in protecting the women who are being in the jails that you're in charge of, then if you will not be decent, then I will be indecent. Like, she planned this, by the way. There's no way she didn't plan this. To be clear, this is not her vajayjay. That the pubes would be crazy. Look at the pubes going all the way up to her fucking belly button here. That's not what it is. It's a merkin. If you don't know what a merkin is, it's spelled MERKIN, and it is a hoo-ha wig, which would be worn or popularized by prostitutes who would wear the wig on their hoo-ha if they had to shave their hoo-ha hair because of lice or perhaps because of a venereal disease, STI. There are various reasons that one may need to shave their hoo-ha, and apparently in times where hoo-ha hair is very preferred, you might wear a merkin. So that's what that is. To be clear, she didn't necessarily expose herself indecently. It's right on the border of something that I would consider relatively unacceptable. And here's the thing. It's the TERFs have a tendency to always be like, oh my God, these trans women, they want to use the bathroom so that they can flash me. No, first of all, trans women, they want to go into a stall. Trans women want to sit down in a floor-to-ceiling, fully walled stall with a nice secure lock, and they want to pee in a room where no one can hear sound. They want to pee in one of those those rooms that are so soundproof that you step into them and once the door closes, it's so utterly quiet that you can hear your heart beating, and it's it's kind of maddening. It's torturous to people. That's what trans women want when it comes to public bathrooms. And then you have these TERFs all the while have been talking about trans people trying to flash them. And here they are. Here they are. The lady doth protest too much. It kind of seems like you are interested in flashing people in public. This poor woman, this poor lady right here, she was standing right there trying to get this woman to calm the down, and she's at ground zero of this explosion. Poor lady. She's at ground zero of that bit. Was the merkin a thong? What was the back view? Yeah, I don't know what the back view was. I must assume that she just had no underwear. Like, it's not a thong. Like, there's no straps. It's just, like, adhesive to the front of her body. So she's wearing a skirt and presume that her butt is covered. But this woman next to her... Hold up. There was another picture here. I don't know that I'll be able to find it. Someone just took a screenshot of that lady's face super close up. This lady right next to her, the eyebrows on that lady, she like looks over and she's like, ugh. But she's sitting there. I don't know if the TERFs all sat together. I'm not really sure what's with this crowd of people over here, if the TERFs are all sitting together. Is she wearing leggings? Is she really wearing leggings? It's really kind of hard for me to see. It's not very quality. She's wearing skin-colored leggings if she is wearing leggings. That was my bad if I missed that. Anyway, so we'll continue on to this article that I have about that, because I know everybody's curious. I think the first thing that everybody asks after someone ostensibly, like, it's so weird. If she did really wear tights, she really did this in the most pretty fashion possible. She did this in the biggest fashion possible. I'm sorry. That's just what it was. Anyway, this is by Vidushi Tiwari. Elaine Miller, who is known online as Gussie Grips, lifted up her skirt to reveal what appeared to be fake pubic hair underneath in the Scottish Parliament last week. The incident occurred shortly after the Gender Recognition Reform Bill was passed, with 86 of the representatives voting in favor and 39 against. Age limit applications will be lowered. Oh, so that was another one of the big things, is previously you couldn't do it at all below the age of 18, and now you can. So... yeah, if you will not be decent towards women who are being raped, you will be indecent. I will be indecent. Police Scotland confirmed to this news organization that a probe into the incident was underway. A spokesperson for the force said, quote, "We have received complaints and inquiries are ongoing." A spokesperson for Scottish Parliament declined to comment because it's a police incident. So at the very minimum, we're looking into it. If she really was wearing nude tights and then the merkin on top of it, they might not be able to get her in for indecent exposure, but I'm curious if they might be able to get her for like shocking and lascivious behavior, if there's something along those lines. Like, because we know that you intended for it to seem as though you were flashing people, even though you did it in the most pussy bitch way possible. We're still gonna investigate and potentially prosecute, or at least fine her. Like, because I believe that there were children present at this thing. A probe in the merkin. Yeah. Yeah, listen. So yeah, about the children, we are not entirely sure that there weren't children there. And the fact that they continuously assume that trans women are the ones who want to show off their genitals, like, I don't really understand what their logic is, if I'm being honest. I would really love to see that lady get some kind of criminal repercussion to her actions, because I just really think it's disgusting for them to constantly accuse us of being sex offenders, and then they go and do things that are at least supposed to evoke the kind of stuff that they're accusing us of doing. Trans people don't generally go and flash their genitals to people in public restrooms. It doesn't generally happen, but they will go ahead and flash their genitals in Parliament and probably get away with it. But that's fine. Don't worry about it. Thank you so much to my patrons for supporting all the work behind the scenes. I appreciate you so much, and I especially want to shout out Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvag, Jovian F. Gaudreau, Bean, M. Hatfield, Heather Clarkson, Amanda B., Sarah A., R. Halverson, Athiette, Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Nova, Suzanne Maynard, Elizabeth Bartell, Sojo, and Mr. Atheist.